So I've criticized All Elite Wrestling multiple times in the past couple of years because the product, in my opinion, has not been that great. Too much of an emphasis on matches and not enough on characters and story. And a lot of the storylines are just not hitting, or they weren't hitting, at least for a time. A while, actually. And every time I would hear Tony Khan talk about it, he would just pretend like everything was okay. But with this video, I want to talk about how now everything is okay, meaning, and not literally everything, but this video is going to be about how AEW Dynamite has gotten better as a show. AEW Dynamite has improved tenfold compared to where it was even 2 months ago. It was a slow sort of increase, and also, if you notice, the viewership is coming back. I believe a couple weeks ago, maybe last week, the show did about 730,000. And this is the show that was dipping into the 600Ks for a while. And now it's up to 700. So people are coming back. The build up to All In has been pretty solid. Not perfect. You can go in, you can nitpick. We can talk about what's working and not working. But if you compare this type of Dynamite to a show even 2 months ago, it's like night and day. Now Dynamite seems to be focused on doing the two things that I think it struggled with for a long time, and that is developing characters and storylines that people care about, and building them little by little and getting us to know and understand and care about the characters. And then the second thing is to make the show feel a lot more spontaneous and unpredictable. There's a lot of angles lately on Dynamite that have been unpredictable out of nowhere that I've enjoyed quite a bit. Check out this week's Dynamite. I'm talking about the episode from June 25th. I'm recording this about half an hour after it ended, give or take. And for the most part, this show I thought was very well done. There were angles from the very beginning. Mercedes Monet beating up on Tony Storm. It was unpredictable. It felt spontaneous. I think one of the things that people miss about like the Attitude Era or the Monday Night Wars era is the fact that the shows felt unpredictable and surprising. You would watch them and something would happen, like an angle would break out in the middle of a match, and you'd be like, whoa, like, what was that? And so it kind of keeps you hooked. Something else that Dynamite's doing, and I'm going to talk about Tony Khan here in a minute, is that Dynamite, besides improving on the characters and the storylines and the surprising factor of it all, they've also done a good job of giving us reasons to have matches. It's not just that TK announces like 6 matches on Twitter before Dynamite even starts. He was doing that for a while. So you would see like this big card of Dynamite. And when you see that, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But it became a thing where they were doing it every week. But now Dynamite has done angles in the show that build up to matches later. Like matches on Collision or the next week. And granted, you have to be careful because you don't want to overdo this either. And AEW, I see it sort of slipping back into that 2021, 2022 era where like every promo backstage would get interrupted. Remember that? Remember those days where every single promo got interrupted by someone and the guy said the same shit. Why don't you and I have a match this Friday on Dynamite on TNT? Or I'm sorry, this Friday on Collision. No, Rampage. I'm an idiot. The wrestler would go, this Friday on Rampage, you and me, live on TNT. Every freaking week they did this, yo. And it got so played out because every character was doing the same thing. And that's just not the way that writing television works. Every character has to be different. When you're writing, you have to put yourself in that character, or you have to ask the wrestler performing that character what they would do. And that requires collaboration. So, an example of this is Tony Khan talking to Swerve about possibly working with Hangman. Obviously, you could make it easy to where Swerve just, okay, I'll work with him. But that's not what the Swerve character would do. The Swerve character hates Hangman with a passion. However, the Swerve character also knows that Hangman might be their only hope in beating Moxley because he doesn't know when he's going to get his next shot. And so uh, it's almost like Swerve has to be talked into it. And week by week, little by little, they're kind of doing that. I feel like he is going to be involved in the finish of the main event All In, but you can't just go there. You have to take it slow so that the character of Swerve can come around on the idea of helping Hangman for the greater good, for the future of All Elite Wrestling, not just Hangman. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's an example right there. You put yourself in the shoes of Swerve. Okay, what would Swerve do if Will Ospreay asked him to work with Hangman? He would refuse at first. And then it took some time to build into it. Now we have Swerve and Ospreay against the Young Bucks at the pay-per-view, and it's for the EVP position. I love this idea. I love it. I hope that Ospreay and Swerve win and we see a fun little show or a few shows where they're in control. If you remember back in 2004, there was a Survivor Series 8 on 8 where the good guys, the baby faces, which was Randy Orton, Chris Benoit, Maven, and I think Edge. I could be wrong. Edge might have already been a heel by then, but I forget. They won a Survivor Series match and got to be the general manager on subsequent weeks. Like, that was fun. Or if you go back to 99, when Vince McMahon was revealed to be the higher power, Stephanie and Linda sold their shares of WWE stock to Steve Austin, so he became the CEO. So they did that awesome episode where Austin goes to Titan Tower and he brings beer and he fires people and he gives JR a raise and he brings in like a bunch of like feces into Vince's office. Like, all that stuff was fun, and you could do stuff like that with Will and Swerve, and I hope they do stuff like that. So I care about the match. I really do. The angle with Okada and Kenny Omega from a couple weeks ago, I thought that was a little bit on the... You're kind of bordering on the cheesy side, mostly because of how Kenny sold it. But they did need something to heat up the match. Because during their feud in AEW, Kenny was the heel during their first match. So in this is the first time that Okada has been the heel against Kenny Omega. So they got to do something dastardly, right? So that works. We're seeing more vignettes. Look, I'm not saying that WWE's formula should be copied by AEW. I don't think they should. I think AEW should be its own show. I think Dynamite should be its own, have its own identity. Right? But you can't forget the most important thing. And that is, no matter how you do the presentation, you need characters and storylines that people care about. And you need to make the show feel spontaneous and fresh, because that's what makes the show fun to watch. And right now, I actually, so far this week, I've enjoyed Dynamite more than Raw and even more than last week's SmackDown. I had a really good time with Dynamite, and that surprised me, and I'm happy about it. I was a little worried that it would be a while before I could say that, and it was a while, but man, it's happened. Dynamite is delivering on some good shows. The show in Arena Mexico from last week, phenomenal. I mean, that show was great. Great international flavor. Weird to see an American wrestling company in Arena Mexico, but, you know, that's like sacred ground, Arena Mexico. CMLL has owned that building for decades. Like, that's like sacred. That's like their MSG, except they actually own it. So for AEW to run there, awesome. Big kudos to Tony Khan for making that deal, because that's a sweet deal that he made for himself, and he got to make history. So yeah, AEW Dynamite has improved. The booking has improved. Tony Khan should be proud of himself. I just wonder, who was it that got through to him? Who was it? Was it Bryan Danielson? Was it the other writers or people like Jimmy Jacobs? Was it maybe a Swerve or an Osprey? Jericho? Who was it that got through to Tony Khan to make this show like this, to give this show that kind of vibe? That's what I want to know, because for a while it really seemed like TK was not listening. It seemed like it was his way or the highway. It seemed like he didn't give a damn about any criticism. He thought he was doing a good show, and that's all that matters to him. But now they're changing up the formula a little bit, and the show feels fresh again. And I hope they continue this past All In. I don't just want the build up to All In to be like this. I want the show to have the same vibe, the same fresh feel to it that the past few weeks have given us for the rest of the year, if not longer. There will come a day where Tony Khan gets burnt out again and we get weak shows, just because he's a human being and that happens. You can't prevent that from happening. We've seen some weaker booking from Triple H lately, but I'm just here to say that I criticized AEW for being lackluster, but I'm a fair man. I praise them now for the last few weeks of Dynamite. I'm still not watching Collision, by the way. I'm still not watching Collision. They have not done a thing to get me into that show. So I'm sorry, but Dynamite is the A show. That's the OG show. So I will watch that, and it's getting better, so I'm probably going to stick to it. And that's something I wanted for months. But every time I would tune back in, I would get mad at the show and tune out for a few weeks. But now it's been a few weeks of great television, and I care again. I'm not all the way back on board, but they've gotten me to care about this All In show, and I'm looking forward to seeing it even more than Saturday night's main event, than NXT Great American Bash, or any of that stuff. This show I'm looking forward to the most of that whole weekend coming up in the second week of July. Do you agree? What do you think? Who do you think got through to Tony? And what do you think about how AEW Dynamite has been lately? If you're still watching. If you haven't watched, I'm telling you, try out this week's show. You might like it. So many great segments. I had a great time with it. It felt like something right out of the 90s. And that worked. Sometimes that didn't work every week, but for AEW, it works. So check out the show if you haven't. But if you have, what do you think happened? Who got through to Tony? And do you agree? Please leave your comments. I want to read them. I may even do a reaction to them. So do that. Take care, yo.